All right, we should be live if everything's working right here. I'm responding to James at the moment. And I apologize for the lack of preseason stuff. Obviously, you can tell that or we're not on the True DFS channel. Hello to everybody who's new. You might not know who I am. Brandon Cruz, Muncie Vice, but nobody can ever pronounce my last name, so I just go by Brandon Cruz everywhere. I am talking about the Busch Clash race that starts in 52 minutes. Now, this will be a very quick and kind of heavy worded live stream, just because, as I'm apologizing since I wasn't able to put out any preseason content. Obviously, you guys are all aware of the merger between True DFS and PayDirt that was already being talked about in the beginning of January. There wasn't really a good way to go about it before it was announced at the beginning of February, so that's why I just didn't put any videos out. Me, Bobby, Sheets, Rody, got absorbed into PayDirt. So I still got stake in the company. I'm still here. Thank God I'm not a contract worker or whatever. So nothing's really changing on that end. In this live stream, we're going to be going over my approach for this race, and I apologize that I am getting messages and stuff. I just want to make sure everything's working well. For those of you who don't know why I'm doing this or why I'm here, I learned quite a lot. Got to respond to this. Learned quite a lot last year in terms of let's see. I'll respond to James after this. I learned quite a lot last year when I really started playing heavy in like everything, right? Like playing like nearly every slate every day, and just due to the variance of DFS, due to the amount of playing and lineups and stuff that you need, I can roughly be confident that I'll take down a contest 2-3% of the time, a year or whatever, and that's going to cover everything. The law of averages are very much in my favor. I'm also making money on StakeKings. I'm also obviously making money from here. So for me personally, I don't really mind showing exactly what my process is and stuff, because I don't think a lot of people have the bankroll to play every week. I don't think obviously we got variance coming into play, and so I just really don't see it as a gigantic negative to just show people just how I play. If you've watched me over the last couple of years, or even when I first started, you kind of know how I roll here. I want to go ahead and talk about what we have on PayDirt, how everything looks for this race. I also got to upload my own lineups and stuff. We'll be talking about both PayDirt and SaberSim, because if you were a True DFS member, you still have your subscription to SaberSim and stuff until the end of February. And personally, I just know how to use SaberSim, so I'll be doing that, and then we'll be looking at PayDirt stuff, and then I'll probably be hand building some stuff. And I won't do any of that on the stream. Like, I'm not going to show you the exact lines that I'm playing, but I'll show you the process and everything that I'm doing. I'll check comments and questions and stuff, periodically. So if it seems like I'm ignoring you, I'm not. This is just typically how I go through stuff, and we have 49 minutes before the slate starts. Let me go ahead and move. Let me make sure I got everything pretty much. I need one more sheet up here before I move stuff. Let's see here. Let me get that. Okay. All right. Let's go. Let's get this. It has been forever since I've used Restream, and hey, what's going on, AD? I mean, look, I've always looked very nice, and I've always been in pretty good physical state. And the studio, oh my God, I finally have a room. Like I'm no longer in the apartment anymore. I'm in my own house. Like, look at all the shit I got behind me. Like, that's killer. It's been like years since I used StreamYard, so they've changed everything. So I'm trying to kind of go through stuff here. All right, cool. We got that. One thing I just want to go over really fast on this is looking at the practice data. Now, yet again, we had practice and then the LCQ and then the Q sessions. Now, the main reason why I did not, or I'm not really putting much stake in practice data, for those of you that don't know me or whatever, I just typically use similar tracks, especially within the same year, for how people are doing. I mean, this is an exhibition race, it's Bowman Gray, whatever, right? These are the averages for your speed in practice between all the practice groups. And so obviously, if we go through, we're not going to really we're not going to go in deeply on this. This is the end of the first group, whatever, and stuff. All that's important is kind of where everybody at is in terms of their, their average, right? Where everybody's kind of settling in. And the reason why I didn't look at Q specifically is because I felt like the practice sessions would be a much better indicator of where people are. For like, if you're fast here, you're most likely going to qualify into the race, right? And if you're slow and then you make it in through the LCQ, which the last 3 guys did, like, whatever, that's just where. Actually, while I'm talking, just in case, because it is kind of stormy, I'm going to just upload lineups in case, my house catches on fire or whatever. I need to do that on the side, because I am doing got 155 entries today. I think 55 in the 15, 40 or so in the 5. Let me just upload those so I have some dummy lineups in there, and then we can kind of go through. I need to make sure that's right on the side. Anywho, anyway, looking at the practice data, and I figured any major adjustments would be made in between practice and the race. I don't think we'd really see much going from practice to Q, just because those teams only had 8 to 16 minutes in the garage to make any adjustments, and even then I don't think we'd have any like life-changing stuff. It was more about data collection and getting together at, what is this? Yeah, sure, let's go. Let me upload that. Let me get these lineups in. Okay, so I have 110 and 135. Perfect, that's fine. Just so I'm not pissing away like 1,200 in case I lose power or whatever. Anyway, we're looking at here, and clearly we're seeing, a good majority of the people who actually made it into the main event way up here. We did see improvement. Like, obviously Nemechek he didn't advance into the main event, but obviously that's an example of somebody who was very, very, very slow in practice, using the big, chunk between practice, because you're not gaining a lot of speed from practice to Q, using the entirety of, we have like an hour in between Q and the LCQ or whatever to make adjustments. I would envision all of the teams in the top, not in the top, in the main event are doing the exact same thing. So I would typically see improvements kind of across the board from everybody, whether it be speed or handling or whatever. Obviously, there'll be some who make more adjustments than others, but that's why I'm just looking at the practice data or have an idea of where everybody's at. When we're looking at the grid here, okay, and we're going to close this one and just look at it through the PayDirt template and stuff. And because I'm showing everything on today's thing, because PayDirt is free right now for you guys to try out everything. If you go and, yet again, we do still have, obviously if you have it through SaberSim and stuff, you still have all my projections on there as well and stuff. But this is what everything is going to look like, just really fast. We have 45 minutes. I kind of want to end around like 10 minutes before lock. This is what everything's going to look like. Now, what I've really enjoyed about James is he's very, very open to everything. Now, obviously, this is the first race for really, testing his stuff, and so he's in charge of the ownership, which I would look forward to improving throughout the weeks. But the main thing that I wanted to highlight and talk about, and obviously it's 23 people, but this is what you're going to see on everything for all of the races here. What I've really kind of tried to focus more on is, now yet again, I just used one baseline number. It's listed under median, but that's my baseline projection. What I've really spent the off season kind of focusing on is making sure I can have data points that kind of line up more for this type of stuff. As in, this is, more so what I've been focusing on, making sure, my stuff can more realistically or more accurately for me, pinpoint what the likelihood of people finishing, top 5, top 10, whatever, and stuff like that. I will have separate models for each individual track. We didn't do that for the Clash because I just, I'm here, I'm telling James, I'm telling you guys, like, it's a fucking Clash. Like, I'm not going to build a whole model for this race to where these idiots might just, run over each other. We didn't know if there'd be rain in the forecast for this, but for the super speedways, I'm doing stuff in the back end to adjust the range of outcomes to more accurately, take into account, you know, stacking the back, the volatility of crashes and stuff like that. Same thing with, short tracks and road courses. They're actually going to have their own um, back in ranges of outcomes and stuff that you are seeing on the site and stuff. Obviously, if you want to hand build, you can do it here. And now personally, like I just hand build by myself, or I'll use SaberSim or whatever. But I am gonna focus more on doing this, and James is exclusively, focused more on taking advantage of what contest sims are lacking and what DFS players are lacking in terms of finding pivots and finding things that are realistically going to help you versus what contest sims have kind of heavily leaned towards is giving you higher ROI lineups but with a way less likely chance of actually hitting and stuff. And so, like, for example, we have your pivot finders and stuff for if we're looking at now, yet again, we're with 23 drivers, so it's not that drastically that drastic when we normally have like a 40 car field. But you can see where kind of everybody's obviously like we have Hendrick starting up front, like Hendrick, Byron, these idiots up here. Like it's going to be very, very difficult to find true pivots off of Larson or Bowman and stuff. But we do see the drastic difference in terms of ceiling and performances for the value plays and more the mid-range, which is more important for NASCAR. And then obviously the optimals, which I don't know if I'm playing these, but based on our stuff right now, these are some of the optimal lineups. Yet again, I don't know if I'm playing these or not. I'm just showing you what is available to you as a PayDirt user and stuff on top of the Discord and stuff. And there'll be more videos going into detail. Yet again, we're kind of tight on time based on where the slate is and stuff. But this is everything that you can find here at PayDirt, which I believe, yet again, I have an admin account, so I don't believe if I click, it might show it. I might have to check out. Yeah, this is where the pricings are at right now compared to where everything else was with where True DFS was and everything. Like you get, and yet again, I'm here, Bobby's here, Sheets' projections and everything are here. We're looking at $40 a month here. Probably going to move up to like 45 or 50, but drastically cheaper than other sites. That's part of the target for this company, is getting more people in at a lower price range that is more affordable to people, and so on and so forth. I just want to show you that type of stuff. When we're looking at this race today, obviously this is the starting grid. If you've been with me, you're familiar with this stuff. I still have my own sheets, which obviously you saw the practice times and everything. But when we're looking at where people are at today, now yet again, I'm not really concerned about this because, like, if you look back at last year's race, you had I believe the winner led 141 laps, and then you had huge percentages of the lap led dominated by 1 to 2 people, and then you had like 30% of fast laps going to one person, 30% of fast laps going to one person. So if you do that, like if you give Larson realistically what his outcome is, it kind of blows everything out of the water with him at like 75. So these are more so the projections that I'm more comfortable with seeing where people are at. And so obviously right off the bat, it seems like Connor Zilic is a pretty decent play. It seems like Bubba Wallace is a decent play. Ryan Preece, obviously, if we're fitting in Larson and Byron and stuff. We're going to get, now I haven't built lines yet. I'm just kind of talking through, obviously, we just got the final stuff here. Let me mute that. Let me mute YouTube here. So if we're like hand building, right, and stuff, and now we lost a huge portion of the bottom, really like the entirety of any of the cheap guys are out of this race. So you can imagine that Suarez is probably going to be fairly popular regardless of what he does, since he's the only guy in the 5K range and he's the only guy below 66. And yet again, ownership's going to lead into Suarez. Ownership is going to go to SVG based on where they are in price and regardless of where we're going. Now, yet again, people know that I've never really built ownership. I just kind of have a feel of just where people are going at. But say if we're building, you're expecting Larson and or Byron. This could be a placeholder for Byron. Actually, let's use it through how you would use PayDirt, right? So let's fetch an optimal lineup based on my data, right? Seems like a pretty strong lineup here, right? Yet again, Suarez makes sense. Hocevar makes sense. Now, yet again, am I giving a lineup away? I don't know if I'm going to be playing this line. I don't know if this line is going to be in my data when I upload my final file to DraftKings. I'm just showing you how I would use this and how, versus what I used to do just on screen. I can just do it here, right? So like Suarez is going to be popular. This is leaning both Larson and Byron because they're the highest predicted guys, whatever. When we're looking at where the field is playing and stuff and where people are going to go, as stated, I think Suarez is probably going to be popular. I think SVG, Connor Zilic is going to be popular. Why is Connor going to be popular? Well, based on my stuff, he seems like one of the better value plays on this slate, starting 19th. Realistically, we're going to see him probably finish inside the top 13 or 14. And he's the individual that I would look towards, not being involved or surviving carnage rather, just because he has, that much talent or whatever. SVG at 24, I have him losing a position, finishing 18th. Obviously, variance is really, really high on NASCAR, but what was the point I was making here? Oh, the value plays right. I would much rather, obviously, play Suarez over SVG, and I personally would rather play, SVG over Dylan here. We're probably going to see a lot of people. Let's see if Cindric is even in this line. So Cindric isn't in this line. Let's just see kind of. I don't want to build out full lineups because that's still kind of a no-no. So let's go back over here and kind of build around with where things are looking at. Now, I'm not crazy about Cindric, okay? Cindric did not have the fastest car in that LCQ. In fact, he only made it in because Allmendinger moved him out of the way. I think Allmendinger had a better car. I think Corey had a better car. And I think there's going to be other people that just have a faster car than Cindric, okay? Ideally, you probably want to go Bowman. If you're looking for somebody in the back of the field who can gain positions, I think Suarez and Bowman are going to be popular because of that. At this point, you got $8,600 left over. You can start jamming in quite a lot of guys who are going to be competing for fast laps and laps led. Now, when I'm looking at that, or when I'm looking at potential guys who can do that, okay, we know that your winners for these races typically come from the top two rows, so your first four starting positions, right? I lean with much more confidence to Larson, Byron, and Briscoe over Ty Gibbs. Okay, those would be the three guys I'd kind of focus on if we're trying to, and visualize, or if we're trying to visualize who can scrape off fast laps in this. Because realistically, this race will probably end up looking like winner of the race at like 141, maybe some 20s here, if not even lower. And then a lot of zeros for actual lap leaders. There might only be 3 to 4 guys who actually even taste the lead in this race if we're lucky, right? So, I think doing the best you can to land on people who can be those drivers, I think that's the direction you want to go. So who would that be? Larson, Byron, Chase Briscoe, Bell, Hamlin. Who are people who could, based on their salaries, yet again, we're playing with a small pool of drivers and we're using pretty much the top half of the salary cap. So at that point, value starts to really become important on this slate. Okay, so who are those drivers who could potentially gain, 4, 5, 6, 7 positions to start looking, to score over 38 points into the 40s and stuff like that? That's people like Hocevar. That's people like Kyle Busch. That's people like Ryan Blaney, Priest, Connor Zilic, Barry, Alex Bowman. So that's where, that kind of secondary priority for those guys kind of comes into play here. Now, yet again, I'm just kind of, talking through drivers and stuff as we have 33 minutes left. I'm going to do one more thing, then I'll look at the chat. I'm going to look at SaberSim really fast just because I've used SaberSim for years. I'm very much debating. I am going to use, I'm going to lean very heavily into James's stuff here because this is built with my stuff in mind. So I think it'd be very, very foolish to not embrace this type of stuff. And so for me, yet again, I just talked about my approach and how I play, right? I have, how many lineups here? I'm doing 58 and the 15. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm going to run 48 or so from SaberSim just because it's the first race, high variance, whatever, and I want to just have those there. I'm going to hand build and work with the PayDirt stuff for my last 10, while I kind of basically hand build and then play the guys that I want based on my data and stuff. That's going to be my approach today. I don't know why the ones did not update here. That's really frustrating. I'm gonna have to manually do that. That's gonna be fun. So let's go ahead and look at what SaberSim is giving me here. So let's restart from scratch. I'm not running dummy lineups and stuff. And then as this is running, I'm going to talk through it and everything. So we can compare. Now, yet again, being aware of what the field is doing, being aware of what is going on with your competitors is the main part or the main thing for DFS and stuff. And people are, they're talking about, insane overlay and stuff. You got to remember that now, half an hour, there is kind of a lot of overlay, but you got to remember, since we did not have the final 3 drivers for the grid in this race, I manually make my projections. I don't make ownership or anything like that. So I can update stuff before, but any site, and that's not a diss, just any site based on their algorithms that they use to make projections and whatever, you need to know the entire grid. So they've only had that for about half an hour. Okay. I don't know how fast some people are updating stuff. I don't know how slowly some people are updating stuff. I know SaberSim had their stuff up about 10, 15 minutes ago, but that's why there's so much overlay right now, because a sport like NASCAR, you typically have really tight windows between when the grid actually comes out, especially for truck and Xfinity. And then, you usually have like an hour 15 to have that finalized, update stuff, make projections, and then update your lineups and stuff. So it's at 7,400 out of 15,000 right now. I would put money that it closes closer to 12,000, 13, maybe 14,000. In fact, I would not be shocked if it filled. Now this is a Wednesday race. It's supposed to be on Sunday, so a lot of things kind of up in the air of why there's so much overlay. Whatever. I'm not really concerned about that. Okay, whatever. I'm looking at kind of what SaberSim is showing, where their ownership is at, just being aware of kind of what the industry is doing and stuff, and we see the drastic difference. Now, maybe it's not even drastic difference because I sort by SaberSim's projections, I sort by my projections, and you're seeing, a lot of names still, up in the same kind of ranges and stuff. Now, okay, those are my true DFS ones I need. Oh, it's because I haven't updated the sheet. These are mine that I manually, the SFGD whatever I typed in. These are mine. These are the old ones that I haven't upfreshed just because I haven't redone the window. Anyway, you see quite a lot of the same people up in the front based on their projections and my projections, right? And anyway, let's I'm going to build. I'm going to see what happens here. Yet again, I'm running like 42 lines here. Well, this builds, I'm going to then look at chat. So I'm catching up finally here, whatever. Thank you for the kind welcome for into PayDirt. I have no clue how to pronounce your name, and I feel it's very rude if I just refer to you as characters, but JPABZ1122, thank you. Obviously I saw your stuff, 80, thank you. What's going on, Andy? Let's see, alt line. Okay, well, first off, Bobby has become a phenomenal friend of mine, and he has done literally nothing but great things for me. So I don't know. Sorry that he's rubbed you wrong, but he's also over here. So, I am going to run the contest sims, despite whatever good or bad things they might have here. I am going to run them, and I just want to see kind of what I get. Now, yet again, the variance of NASCAR is huge. Like, you just have to embrace that you're gonna burn a lot of money on the sport. And so, yes, Larson looks the best. When we're looking at the practice data, which I closed earlier. Let's go back. His teammate is actually faster. Now, yet again, these are splitting hairs or whatever. And you mentioned that, or not even mentioned the broadcast that Larson didn't even know how fast he was going in Q. He just happened to have the fastest time. I would anticipate all the Hendrick guys kind of have this speed, and I don't think Larson should be, at least your own portfolio or whatever, I don't really think he should be over like 55 or 60% of any given stuff. Like, based on the stuff here, I'm in 72, which I want to see the exposure here. That means he's probably in a lot of 15. I'm personally gonna, now yet again, people have already asked me, do I run rules? Do I run men uniques? Do whatever, what do I do, in my lineups? And I was telling a couple guys, I kind of just eyeball it. I'm playing so many lineups that, and it's my data that I'm throwing in, right? And I'm gonna trust it. I'll just kind of eyeball it and make sure I'm not kind of really shooting myself in the foot. Like I really don't want more than, like, as I think about it, 55 a little on the low side, but like 70, 65 a little on the high side. I'm gonna roll with a solid 58. I want a max exposure of 58 lineups for Kyle Larson here. And I think I can get away with being that. I'm going to actually just rebuild. I typically like doing that here. I think I can get away with that because field's only 23 cars. It's a exhibition race or whatever. Every race for NASCAR is different in some form or fashion, but I'm pretty comfortable, ending up with around 58% Larson. Because I think that's giving me enough leverage to, if he has a bad day, I got 42% of my lines without him. I think a lot of people are gonna probably end up being higher on Larson than that, based on it being Kyle Larson, him getting the pole. I just think there's a real chance that Byron could probably have a better car here. Let's see what else are we doing here. No more comments or anything here. I do appreciate the 50 guys watching and being here and everything like that. I will probably be live for another 10 minutes because, as I said, I gotta finish those last lines. It might be here for like another 8. And it really, really does suck that if we do have massive overlay like this, the rest of the season will probably be hit pretty strongly here. And so where am I at based on this type of stuff? And I just got a message on Discord. Let me see who is. Let's see. I got questions in here. All right, I'll answer that in Discord in a minute. Well, actually, I'll just answer that now. An individual asked me in Discord, what is the best way to avoid duplications? Is it leave money on the table or have low-end players? I have not dealt with duplications in NASCAR. I make my own stuff. That's a thing I don't really deal with. If I am duped, it's closer for like truck Xfinity. But I usually do a good job at having most lineups duped under like 4 to 5 times. So that's personally not a concern for me. I'm looking here. So this is showing Austin Dillon. I don't like that. Let me look here. What is his salary at? 68. I really don't try and mess with too much stuff when I'm like this deep into running stuff. I want to see if everybody else kind of comes in out here, because like I see 40% Austin Dillon. I'm like, oh, that's kind of nervous about that. But he's not projected to be owned very well. Now, whether the same percent my stuff, I know that Austin Dillon's probably not going to be owned much. So that's a pretty big leverage. Where is, if I look at this here, I don't really want to bring up optimals because now I'm pretty deep into thinking of kind of what I want to play here. So Dylan is pretty low here. But his owner. Okay, so I'm not going to change the Dylan stuff here. Give him time too. 23 minutes to lock for this slate. I think this is pretty much where I want to run. Who am I low on? I have very little Elliott, very little Reddick because I don't like Reddick for this race. I didn't like what I saw in the car. I didn't like what I liked in practice. Same thing with Gibbs. You know, a lot of my opinions are just baked into my numbers, and so usually I'm either right or wrong on a slate just based on that here. I'm gonna, you know, when I start hand building, maybe it'll make more sense. 13 on Hamlin and Blaney, and that makes sense if I'm paying up for 10, you know, for Larson, and I have so much more of the other guys. Same thing with Byron, and I actually like playing Byron and Larson together tonight. I'm not going to make a rule for that. If I end up with it, I end up with it. I think I'm fine with this. So let me go ahead and save that. Did the save to all of the other dumb contests? It did. The other one, for whatever reason, did not. I don't want to show what these lineups are, so I'm going to move that here. I'm going to upload that. Okay, so perfect. So now I just have my 10 lineups that I'm going to hand make for the 5 and my 10 lineups I'm going to hand make for the 15. Now, what does that entail? How do I hand build? What am I going to do? Well, first off, I'm going to lean into what is being presented as good lineups and optimals on here. And then also, you know, I'm kind of just going to hand build based on, you know, my projections or how I'm feeling and stuff. And so on and so forth. I'll probably end up posting my final exposures in the PayDirt Discord and stuff, as per usual. I think that's mainly it. Quick bit of housekeeping and stuff. I am going to do a show with Bobby and James on Tuesday of next week, focusing more on the plate races and stuff. You know, I'm kind of going to go through, you know, that DFS, you know, plate race masterclass that I have, but with James and Bobby because they just don't play NASCAR much. That'll probably be like an hour long video, so feel free to come in there and ask questions. I really kind of want to move away from the week by week preview, like midweek, like that. I just feel like that's kind of useless. I've moved. I don't think that's worth my time. I'd rather coach people and help people based on how they play because like it gets repetitive years and years and weeks of being like, we're at Vegas this week. My data likes these guys, and then talk about that for an hour. Oh, we're at Dover this week. Oh, my data likes these guys. You know, so like I'd rather focus more on the coaching style, you know, of helping people here at PayDirt and just doing the live shows because James wants me to keep doing live shows as, you know, as like a way to bring people in to the site. Although I won't be showing the PayDirt or any of the stuff I do on my screen. I'll probably just be talking for a majority of this year without much on the screen. Maybe practice data, but that'll be it. But yeah, that's it. I guess I feel like they would fill, but maybe not. Maybe I got to throw in more lineups today. Which, well, it's at 9,000. I think. Look, it's at 9K right now. I think it locks at like 13 and a half, closer to 14. There's 20 minutes left. We see this all the time. I think it gets close to filling. I think the 5 is going to fill. I think there's plenty of time to fill these lineups and stuff. Anywho. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing to follow me and enjoy my content and stuff like that. I'll talk to you guys. Like I said, I'll probably be on a Super Bowl show as well Sunday maybe, because I'm here for NASCAR, but I play every sport, right? Yeah. Anyway, happy to see you guys. Happy to be here, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.